All right, Adam, we have to have a conversation. You didn't even list the Cavaliers on this Google Doc that you created because reasons. This Cavs,
Yeah.
I think that the Cavs top duo of guys is the best duo that we're going to talk about by far.
Yeah. So brain fart moment. Note to self: don't Google Sheet plan things at 11 p.m. at night. It's just not going to be a good idea. You're going to forget an important detail. In my mind, I looked at Garland and think extension, and therefore not rookie contract anymore, but doesn't kick in until another year. So the duo of him and Mobley, 100% worth talking about. And I have been, I'll just throw it out there, a huge Darius Garland fan since his days at Vanderbilt. I am wrong for this, but it just shows my love for the guy. I had him above Ja Morant all those years ago back in the draft. So again, mistake on my part? Yeah, probably. But I am a huge fan of Garland. To me, that said more about Darius than it did about Ja.
Well, the guy I want to talk about is Evan Mobley because, look, I tend not to dive into these workout circuit things in the off season. I tend not to be a guy that really gives a shit about that stuff. His jumper looks good. Like the way that the folks over there in Southern California, that I believe it's like Olin's Simpless and like those guys are really working with him in terms of getting him to his mid-range shot off of different sets of footwork. If he can shoot from the mid-range and obviously he can take some ball screens already because he can really handle the ball. He plays with great bend, has just incredible hand-eye coordination for a big, incredible dexterity, great balance, great coordination. If he can get the footwork stuff down and shoot from the mid-range and create those shots, that's a top 10 player in the league. That's it's not even a question. He is so good already defensively. I thought he had a real case for second team all defense this year. And if he's creating shots in addition to the passing, in addition to just getting shots out of ball screens with Darius Garland, getting shots off of cuts into the dunker spot, he's going to average 23 points a game, maybe 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and play elite level defense. That's a top 10 player in the league. Everything I've seen from Evan Mobley says to me, this guy is about to take another leap and just be an absolute star.
We will see. Time will always tell. I think the footwork thing is really fascinating. One of the knocks that I had on Mobley coming out of the draft is that as a face-up driver, he's a lot more of a deliberate, turn you, spin you, fadeaway jumper, baby hook, as opposed to get all the way to the rim and use his length to finish, clean layup attempts or dunks. Leaning into that and understanding how his body moves and functions and working on different counter moves or whatever his training staff is working with him on may make him even better in that regard, as opposed to trying to, jam a square peg into a round hole and just say, hey, you're going to be a face-up driver. Let's get you working on your separation off the bounce a little bit more. This fits who he is a lot more. I love the pairing of him and Garland because they're both high IQ basketball players that can create on their own. And they're both so good in specific ways off ball. I think Garland's an unbelievable knockdown shooter as a catch and shoot guy. And I think Mobley's a tremendous finisher near the basket on catch and finishes, whether that's standing in the dunk spot or out of the roll. So I'm curious from you though, Sam. I mean, how long do we think a too big lineup in Cleveland is the right course of action for them with Allen and Mobley? And how much do we really say, hey, this guy, as he continues to fill out, get stronger, get better, is going to be such a comparative advantage at the 5 that if we take these two and we just surround them with shooting and maybe one other option that can go get their own, we're going to be unstoppable on the offensive end. And Mobley's so good on defense, we'll be okay there too. Is that something that's coming down the pike, or is the too big thing just, it works?
Right now it works, and I'm good with continuing it as it works. and continuing to get Evan Mobley, maybe some staggered minutes at the 5 off the bench, with bench units, right? Maybe you do some units where it's like you're running a 2-man game with Karis LeVert and Evan Mobley at the 5 as your second unit, right? And then Darius Garland and Jared Allen with Mobley on the wing, at the 4, acting as like your secondary initiator kind of. Maybe that's your move later, right? Like maybe that's your early in the game finishing lineup, everything. The weird thing is that so Jared Allen is very young. Like Jared Allen's 24. He has a long contract. I think you kind of just got to let this develop organically. They're good enough as it is. Like that, Jared Allen has gotten a lot better as a rim protector. I hated the fit. I hated it whenever I first saw that they were actually going to sign Jared Allen to that contract. I did not like the idea of pairing him with Evan Mobley, but the more you watch it last year, the more Jared is just such a good rim runner, and he's such a good threat for Garland, who's so good at throwing those lob passes. And Jared is such a good guy for Evan to learn from as like a quarterback of a defense. He's gotten a lot better. I used to think Jared Allen used to get in so much trouble by chasing and or chasing rebounds, but more than that, chasing blocks and like pulling himself out of position. He was so much better last year at that. He was so much more solid and steady defensively. I still think that Evan is a little bit better of a defender than what Jared is. I think that like the numbers kind of indicate, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, that Jared, his numbers in terms of on-off were a little bit stronger than what Evan's were. But I think that Evan is just like kind of the linchpin that is the marginal. He's the advantage that they have because he's so long. Being able to play that second big is so valuable. Being able to have someone that's so switchable and so big is incredibly valuable. Whereas like there's more Jared Allens out there than there are Evan Mobleys, right? That goes without saying, but I think that's what makes Evan Mobley such a valuable piece, is that he can be the chess piece that's kind of moving around all the time. Yeah, I mean, I think you got to just let it roll for now. This is a problem that you figure out 2 years down the road, not a problem that you try to answer now, because it's not a problem right now. You know what I mean?
Well, and speaking comparatively of where the cap is about to go, Jared Allen's contract 2 years from now is going to look mighty nice as a trade piece if you absolutely have to move it and it doesn't work anymore. So I think there's patience is certainly going to be rewarded for them in that regard. It's just, for me, I think shooting is always going to be a premium when you have star players, especially if they can be a pick and roll combination. And like Markkanen has filled in and done okay. I think LeVert is fine in that type of role, and it's valuable to have a secondary creator. But I've always wondered, like, what are they going to do to address one more wing shooter? They need a little bit more depth at those spots. And, whether that's Okoro continuing to get better or Ochai Agbaji really coming in and just having a simplified role that we've seen year after year at Kansas, he can fulfill. I think that helps his team. So love the direction that they're going, and think that it's, the pieces with Mobley and Garland, they're so good that if everybody else just has a simple, clearly defined role around them, they're going to be in really good shape.
The last guy I wanted to ask about is Isaac Okoro. I liked Isaac pre-draft. I had him as like a tier 3 guy. I did not have him as, top tier, top 5 overall pick guy. I think I might have had him at 5, but like that's not the grade I had on him because I just didn't have anyone else in that class really that I loved. Like I had him and Tyrese Halliburton like very, very close to one another. One of them hit, one of them didn't. If you're the Cavs, are you just like treating Isaac Okoro like he's a defensive stopper at this point? Or are you treating him like he still has some upward growth in terms of his shooting ability? How do you evaluate that piece moving forward?
Yeah, I think he's much more of a defensive stopper. I was slightly lower on Okoro. I think I had him like 15 or 16, somewhere in that range, just because I did not buy into the jumper and still still don't. But I think that as long as you have the guy, you have to continue to work on developing it. I think that there's also, room for one slasher in a system where you have as many high field passers as the Cavaliers could with Garland and with Mobley. But Okoro's value comes when you do decide to play Mobley at the 5, not necessarily in moments when Allen and Mobley are out there. I think then Okoro becomes a real liability. So an interesting piece for them to have, but it's hard for me to consider him a building block when, as we've said, the 2 big lineup is working so well. And around that, you just need floor spacing. That becomes so much more of a priority than a perimeter stopper because you have so much length and rim protection behind you. Like a lot of what Okoro does is just rendered inert by the pieces that Cleveland already has.
I would say that this is the swing year for Isaac. Because it's one of those deals where you look at the box score and you're like, wait, Isaac Okoro shot 35% from 3 this past year on over 2 attempts per game. But like when you watch him, it's just clear that like opposing teams do not care when he shoots. They do not care when he has the ball at the end of the day. And this is the year where he needs to prove, look, I can make 37% of my wide open threes, right? I might not be a legit floor spacer, but if you leave me open, I'm going to hurt you. Improve that to opposing teams. If he can do that, I think I am not writing him off as like a starting caliber, like useful NBA player at all. Like this is a second-year player that was 21 years old last year that averaged 9 points a game on 48% from the field, 35% from the 3, 77% from the line while playing very high-level defense. And I know that like Cavs fans get a little bit frustrated because if you look at Okoro's like numbers against him as a scorer, they look pretty bad, but it's because he's a 21-year-old guarding like the opposing team's best player. And that's really fucking hard to do. Do I think he's going to end up being more than like a role player? Probably not. But I think there's more upside there than meets the eye. But like how it's weird because you watch it and it doesn't feel great watching Okoro. The box score weirdly looks better than what the tape does on offense, despite the fact that like you also have to watch the games to like understand that he is good defensively, like no matter what the numbers will tell you, and what opposing players like shoot against him and everything. He is good on the ball and like he is like very accountable off the ball. He's a weird player to evaluate. I don't really know. I definitely would not give up on him is what I would say if I was a Cavs fan.
No,
I would not give up on him.
No, and I think the fear is that he turns into in a postseason series like Andre Robertson, where he just gets ignored in a lot of times. It's that strategic chess piece. And again, if Cleveland is going to play 2 bigs, that becomes a really easy piece for an opposing coach to target.
Yeah. And like he is at real risk of being played off the court. But this is a swing year for Isaac Okoro, is what I would say. I have some faith in him still. And again, when you look at the box score, it does not look disastrous. But when you watch it, it doesn't feel great offensively. And I need to see more, basically. But there's enough there that I'm willing to continue to play out the string for sure.